Welcome to the Work the System podcast, where we help entrepreneurs make more and work less using systems. And I'm your host, Josh Fonger. And today we've got a special guest. We have Chris Tuff. Chris is the national best-selling author of The Millennial Whisperer, which was released in February 2019 and quickly became the #2 best-selling book at Barnes & Noble. His dynamic approach to attracting and motivating the next generation in the workplace has had him featured in Forbes, Fast Company, Fox TV, Cheddar News, and more. Chris is also a partner at 22 Squared, a full-service advertising agency based out of Atlanta, Georgia, where he oversees content marketing and partnerships, as well as the employee engagement consulting division. Chris has held many different roles over the 10 years he's been there, and now focuses his time building new offerings and motivating the millennial generation in the workplace. Chris was one of the first marketers to work directly with Facebook in 2005 and is now one of the foremost thought leaders in the digital space. Always on top of emerging trends, he oversees all content marketing and helps push to get out existing clients access to first-to-market ads, products, and offerings. He's responsible for partnership development with technology and media, companies like Twitter, Google, Facebook, and beyond. And I am very excited to have him on because this is going to be great for me to learn from the Millennial Whisperer himself. All right, Chris. So tell us the backstory. How did you get into this line of work with regards to knowing millennials and content marketing?
Sure. So I fell into the digital space after 64 job interviews. It was lucky 65 that I finally fell into an interview at a digital ad firm locally in Atlanta called Moxie. I was the 13th employee there. And I had the benefit of, one, not getting those first 64 job interviews, because through that kind of pursuit, I was able to, I think, identify where I was passionate. And when I landed at this digital ad firm, we grew from 13 to 400 very fast. And so I had a lot of roles over the 6 years that I was there. And I kind of found my niche in this emerging media world. And it was, some of the crazy stories along the way. I was told that as I was being one of the first people to work with Facebook on behalf of Verizon Wireless, it was right around that time that the owner of the company said, "Chris, there's this new thing called a viral video. And if you can get 1 million views of a video, we'll give you your own department." And so I took that very literally and I filmed my engagement. And this was before YouTube. So I had a camcorder in a tree as I was running down the streets of Atlanta, and I pretended to sprain my ankle to my wife. Now wife, she said yes. And I went from spraining my ankle to popping the question, and it was a scale of emotion the internet had never seen, because she was kind of laughing and making fun of me, and then she started crying. And it was like a 4-minute video. I put it on Christopher.Tuff.com, and fast forward a week, I got a call. This is when you had to pay for bandwidth. And I got a call from the server company. They said, "Chris, Mr. Tuff, we have your credit card on file, but you're currently getting 100,000 views and it's doubling every hour. What would you like to do?" I was like, "Let her rip." So I ended up getting millions and millions of views. And Good Morning America flew down. It got us on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And that's kind of when all that started to happen, I knew I'd kind of found this kind of special place for me where it seemed that passions and professions were starting to overlap. And I had a failed startup. So all entrepreneurs out there, I did get my failed startup out of the way in 2008, which a lot of people struggled through. And then my wife became pregnant and I had to get health insurance and everything else. So I came to 22 Squared 10 years ago to help them evolve into the digital space. And so we were about 1/3 the size back then. And I think 6% of our revenues were digital. It might have been as low as 3%. And now we're up to 67% of our revenue being digital. And, I've played a variety of roles, but really what inspired the book was hitting rock bottom for me. Mm-hmm. And I start the book that way, to some people's dismay. They're like, "Chris, you can't tell people this stuff." I'm like, "Well, you got to practice what you preach." Mm-hmm. And so when I hit rock bottom, I changed 2 main things. One was I changed my metric of success from beating my brothers in the game of life, which is a horrible metric for anyone else that has that metric, to success was going to be judged on a daily basis. And it was going to be much more about impact made and how I can empower, for me, a group of 30 millennials. And then the other key thing that I changed was really moving into this coach mode and being a servant leader. And so it was about 7 months in, the department was cranking. So this was, once again, only 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago. And 7 months in, I was on a guy's retreat up in North Georgia with a bunch of men that I didn't know. And I put it together as a way that we men could actually be resources for one another, mostly entrepreneurs. Average age was probably 45. And I introduced myself. I was like, wait, shoot, I don't really know what I do anymore, but I'm kind of like the Millennial Whisperer. And it was the guy who was leading the retreat, who I didn't know at the time, Tommy Breedlove, who turned to me as I sat down after sharing my story. He goes, you better write that book. And I was like, what book? He goes, The Millennial Whisperer. And the rest was kind of history.
Wow. Well, that's quite a wild ride in terms of metrics, millennial whispering, advertising, the growth of Facebook viral videos. So let me see if I can kind of piece through it, because you know our audience, and they're trying to. A lot of them are older, right? They're 45 and older, probably half of them, and they have not quite figured out the social media thing. It sounds like you have, and the millennial thing. Let's start with that. So most people are going to hire a millennial in the next year who are listening to this. And so what is it that you have learned, because you work a lot of millennials, with regards to hiring them, engaging them? What are the tricks to doing that right?
So one of my favorite quotes, which has come since publishing, is millennials aren't the problem. They just expose all the problems. And I think that in our corporations or small companies, we often rely on processes and ways of leading that we have in the past. And if you look around you, everything has changed, right? And what really changed everything is kind of what we're doing now. It's social media and technology. And the whole book, The Millennial Whisper, that I wrote is based on statistics. And if you look statistically, what they're looking for out of their organizations, their number one thing isn't different than any other generation in the past. The number one thing is pay and benefits. You get some variation with their emphasis on culture, and then also work flexibility. And those are two things that I think we're starting to see come up, especially in a job market that we're in, where they're getting the recognition and the priorities that they haven't in years past. And, work flexibility is one where it is definitely first and foremost in these people's minds that because of this, they feel like they should be able to work from home here and there because they're answering emails at all times of the day or calls. And so this accessibility thing is a really important piece to, as we're looking to build a company that is better accommodating for millennials. Those are some of the key things. But most of my book is more about what they're looking for from leaders. And so if you break it down, the four most important things, this is like the money slide. This is the slide when I'm giving presentations, everyone takes pictures of. And according to the 2018 Deloitte Millennial Survey, which is by far the most comprehensive out there, the number one thing that they're looking for out of the leaders is inspirational leadership. And then you have autonomy. So they hate micromanaging, and they want transparency from their leaders. And the last piece is they want purpose. So they want something within their job that is bigger than just profits or a bottom line. And especially as we're moving statistically into the next generation that are just entering the workforce right now with Gen Z, that is even more important. But you break down any one of those things, right? Inspirational leadership, I think, is a fascinating one because you ask any leader or manager or entrepreneur, hey, Bob, would you consider yourself an inspirational leader? Bob will say, yeah, they light up anytime I talk to them. It's like, hey, thanks, Bob. And then you ask two people on Bob's team, and it's like Erica and Joey, is Bob an inspirational leader? Their first question is Bob going to find out? And it's like, no, Bob's not going to find out. And it's like, no, he's not an inspirational leader. And so I use that as an example of we don't really have the right resources to judge, I think, our leaders on this stuff. But also, I think we should look at how we pair up to lead companies. So have order and vision or inspiration paired up. And then I love talking about autonomy and transparency because I think a lot of people, even like transparency, you break that down. Most small business owners or leaders think that transparency means they have to either show how much profit they're making and how much they're taking themselves, or on the other side, that they need to cry in front of their people. And what they're actually looking for in transparency is just connection. And so tactically in the book, some of the points that I bring up is you should follow everyone on your team on social media. And the only reason for that is so when you come in on a Monday, you can say, Meg, that concert you went to looked like so much fun. Can you tell me more about that? Or to another person, it might be them donating their time to a habitat build. It doesn't matter, but what that's doing is it's creating a bigger connection with your people. And the other piece of transparency is context. So you don't have to necessarily just show everything, but you've got to build a picture for why you're making the decisions that you're making, even though some of those might be mistakes. Last week, you might have made a mistake. Go ahead and tell them those things and the things you learned or their role in actually contributing to that effort that is then creating this bigger picture. And I could talk a lot about a lot of those points, but I'll let you kind of lead the discussion on it.
No, well, each one of them I actually want to go a little bit deeper on because it's real business. And so before I do, is it different with an online company versus a traditional company? So let's say you're a dentist. Would you apply these 4 things differently than if you run a digital advertising agency where everyone's remote?
So so that's a great question. So one of my examples in the book is a dentist, a guy who is a dentist in town, Atlanta Dental Spa. Mm-hmm. We also have restaurants as examples in the book, as well as digital companies like Ben Kirshner's, who was called out by Forbes as the #1 boss for millennials. He's got a digital advertising firm that does a lot of technology work. But no, I would say that this stuff, a lot of the points and things, it's no different from one to the other. The one thing that I also say is that the emphasis on us as leaders to create connection. I mean, look at technology. Look, we're connecting here. And I think that we don't give enough credit to the ability to connect virtually with the technology that's available to us. And so one of the examples I use in the book about the power of that is I went to New York and I was meeting with Snapchat, a guy who I'd known for years. And I brought one of my coworkers with me. And I was like, Adam, good to see you. I gave him a big hug. It was right after Snapchat had opened these ridiculously amazing offices. And we started talking about his child that he just had. And my coworker said, how long have you guys known each other? And I was like, Adam, how long have we known each other? 4 or 5 years? Adam, we've never met in person. All of this relationship has been based on a closed Facebook group that we were a part of. And we just got to know each other that way. And so I don't think we place enough emphasis on that. But a lot of these points, I think, do come through. I think the other side of it, especially as we get into Gen Z, is really if you do have a virtual company or if you have people all over the place, just forcing that face-to-face interaction, whether it be via a Zoom like this versus a call or just going to meet someone for coffee. You've got to push that on this generation because especially as you go into Gen Z, they grew up with cell phones and text. And so having that face-to-face is something that you have to make a part of your rule system. For one of the rules I have is that if you're in we have 370 employees at our firm and most of the people are in the same office. And so I say that you're not allowed to text, IM, or email if they're in the office. You've got to walk over to that person's seat and talk to them in person. And so there's, I think, elements of those that we need to introduce more.
That's interesting. So it's the same regardless if it's an online company or physical, but maybe the medium's a little bit different. So if it's physical, you actually do want to go face-to-face because there's things that can only be done in close proximity. Okay.
Sure, exactly. And, I think some elements, one of the things that I tell a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners is that when your head hits the pillow at the end of the day, if you're not utterly exhausted from rewarding and recognizing your people, you haven't done it enough. And the reason for that from a sociological standpoint is one, a lot of them grew up with helicopter parents and this whole idea of a participation trophy was real. And then the second piece is that any time that they wanted any form of validation in the marketplace from anyone, from their peer group, they post something to Instagram, they get the 120 likes, and then all of a sudden it fuels them up. And if they don't get the 120 likes, they take it down so no one sees it. And so I think there's this element that they're looking for, and tactically what that means is as things as simple as when someone gets a compliment from a client, or if someone just did a good job, forward that to the rest of the team and say, congratulations, everyone, check out this awesome job that Meg did today. I think the other piece of that is just like how people take feedback. And I say that, you got to build a better sandwich in your feedback system. So go in, talk about what they did well. And instead of saying, but, you say, and. So you did a great job presenting today. And I think there's a couple of things that we can work on. I counted how many times you said, and it was about 24. So let's concentrate that in the future. And then you throw it with another compliment. So you got to get the other side of the bun and give them another compliment. And by the way you push yourself with confidence and standing in front of a group bigger than any group you've ever been a part of, awesome job. So I think there's certain things that we just need to change the way that we approach this generation. And when we start making these small tweaks, everything starts falling in place.
Wow. It sounds like it's a lot of work.
Because it is.
And so what I'm thinking in my mind is I'm thinking of like, let's just say a car dealership, and
Sure.
you're the manager of a car dealership, and you used to give maybe quarterly reviews, or if you ever did reviews at all. And so the feedback was maybe once a quarter or once a month. And this sounds like it's actually needs to be more rapid.
And in real time. And actually I have car dealers as clients. Southeast Toyota's one of our, 170 car dealers. And I've gotten to know a few of the owners, and they will reach out to me and say, so Chris, what kind of hints do you have for me? And I think real-time feedback is one of those where annual reviews are a waste of time. And I mean, if people even make it a year nowadays, we're lucky. And so more than anything, and I think people grow reliant on those reviews because they don't necessarily have the checkpoints in place or the communication in place, or not only reviews, but it's also, you hear that millennials have to be promoted every 6 months. People are like, Chris, do you have to make up new job positions in between these because you got to promote them every 6 months? And I always tell them that that's indicative of a greater issue, because they're relying on those job promotions to fill them up with this kind of, I think, reward and recognition so it'll save you a ton of money in the end. And all these promotions and all of this work, if you can just do it in a more real time and also person to person communication versus everyone thinks that a review is like, oh no, here it comes, it's going to be so bad. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be so bad. So yeah.
That's interesting. Well, and I've read a lot of books on this particular topic, and I'm sure you too. And it seems like a lot of things you came up with they're not, like, people have not changed that much. Money still is a key thing. People are still working for money. But it's what I'm hearing. I haven't read your book yet. It seems like it's the rapidness of it, leveraging technology. But let's go through a real world example. So let's just, because we brought it up, let's just say dental office. So you have a dental office, and you're the leader of that, if you're a dentist. And are there certain things you should do to be inspiring? Do you have to be inspiring once a year at the annual, Christmas dinner, or do you have to be inspiring like every single morning? How often do you have to be inspiring?
So I think a lot of people think, like, especially my introvert friends that are leaders, they're like, well, I mean, how do I be inspiring all the time? And what I tell them is, you can be inspiring through text. You can be inspiring through emails. And so how do you use some of these devices that are available to us and systems that we can create that can also help with that? So dental offices, the example I use in the book is what's known as ADS bucks, which is Atlanta Dental Spa bucks. And what my friend Peter does with his dental office is he will give everyone, I think it's like a $50 ADS buck that they can present to someone else. So he's actually pushing down the recognition and the building up and a little bit of that inspiration and saying, all right, people, here's your $50 at the beginning of the month, fill it out and post it on the board in our common area by the end of the month. And so by the end of the month, what will happen is people start looking at the board, and they're making $150. Sally might have got three $50 ADS bucks and these amazing compliments written by her peers. But the other side is true as well, where you've got the person that goes up to that board 3 months in a row and there's nothing up there for them. So it's also this kind of nose flick or reality check where it's like, okay, not only is my boss not doing this, but my peers aren't doing it. So I think that's one of the key pieces. But one of the other parts of inspirational leadership is also comes in that form of transparency and context, where just the more that you can give people the full picture of what's going on with your business and an element of honesty within that, and then that connection will go far beyond you just getting them. When we try to say inspirational, you think of the person that is the rah-rah extrovert, like, here's where we go. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily just have to take that form.
So you don't have to be Tony Robbins. You can just be regular.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's cool. And, as you're saying this, and this maybe is a bad example or a good example, but I have a client who's a painter and growing his painting business out. And as his team distributed further and further away, he realized the only way he could be inspiring was to do a video. And so we came up with this system where once a week, anytime he felt like inspired, he would shoot a little video on his phone. He made sure all the employees were part of the same Facebook group. And it was just, here's what's going on in the company. Jimmy did a good job this week. I love how you guys painted that house. Go get him. And it was just super simple. It took 5 minutes a week.
Totally.
But that made a dramatic impact on his business.
So smart. And, another example I use in the book, and this is, it's more along the lines of just connection and allowing your people to be heard. But I use my friend Robbie Kukler, who has about, I think, 9 restaurants around Atlanta. And I asked him, what are some of those tactics that you're putting in place? Because you're getting a lot of hourly workers, right? You're getting in a job market where they can kind of get anything they want. So what are you doing to help with this current environment? And in Atlanta, to get talent for restaurants right now is super, super tough because of the unemployment rate being so low and all the restaurants popping up. And he said, I do something very simple. And all I do on a quarterly basis, I take my hourly workers and I give them one of my restaurants to just come talk to me as a group in a town hall type scenario and to ask me questions, to tell me all their frustrations without their managers being there. But I also do the same thing with the managers, and I do the same thing with the supervisors. And what that does is it allows this more one-on-one communication where they can hear straight from me what's going on. And obviously, for those with more virtual companies, you can do that same sort of thing given Zoom and Facebook and all of these other tools. And I thought that was a good point where it's just people want to be heard. Yeah. They just want to get it off their chest and be heard. And with that, you're a step above your competition.
Yeah, I really like that. Sam's, my partner's got a concept, he calls it the mysterious boss concept. He said, if you're a mysterious boss, you're in for a world of trouble in the future. So just don't be.
Especially in today's day and age, that's for sure.
You'll be found out. So autonomy, so that's the next thing. So let's say you're a restaurateur and you've got your employees, but of course they've got to be there to wash dishes and serve people and pour drinks. So how do you give them a sense of autonomy? How does that work?
So one of the concepts that was introduced to me by my friend, I met him when writing this book. Forbes called him the #1 boss for millennials. And he introduced me to a really interesting concept that I put into tactical application within my team. And it's this idea of protect your house. Mm-hmm. And part of that autonomy is that they want to feel like you're pushing down that responsibility. And that goes everything from bad culture fits to workers that aren't working or carrying their own weight to everything else. And it is a system that seems to work. So the constant reminder when you're with your team saying we've built something special here. Hopefully you have something special that you can actually tout that. We've built something special here. It's up to you all to protect this house. So when there's a bad culture fit, it's up to you all to raise your hand and identify that. But not only that, but rely on one another. So in a restaurant scenario, when people put it on them to cover each other's shifts, instead of having them call you as the boss saying, I'm not coming in, have a system where it's up to you all to cover for one another. And guess what happens is by protecting this house, when one covers for the other, there's an expectation that that same thing will be reciprocated. And I love that idea of that, and kind of pushing that control and protect this house. It comes from, I think, an Under Armour campaign. But the other piece, I use the example of, I was coming home from a Christmas party at our CEO's, and my wife turned to me and she said, "Chris, how have you stayed here for 4 years?" And, you know, I'm a very, as you can probably tell, ADD kind of entrepreneurial person. And I said, I can break it down for you in one simple thing. And it's that they've given me enough autonomy and a long enough leash that I can be entrepreneurial and create new things and pursue new things. But they've given me enough structure that I'm always feeling like I'm becoming a better leader in person. And in the book, I call it autonomy within structure, but that's essentially also what they're looking for.
Okay. So how do you do that in a safe way without having somebody run too far off to the side and just, blow all the money you're giving them?
So, I mean, I think it's, it's a balance, and I think it's a touch point thing. And the more touch points that we can have with our people, and that's also, I say that with the real-time feedback, I think you'll find that a lot of that stuff falls in line. But then also when you have when you have this thing in place where it's up to them to kind of control the environment that they're a part of, they self-regulate.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very good. So just because of our time, I want to get to this,
Sure.
this question because it's important for me and my coaching. So let's say you hire a millennial. What are the things you want to put in for sure? And you kind of went through with these 4 key things.
Yep.
Are there any tactical things you want to make sure you have in place so that they stay?
Yeah.
Because you're investing in them, you're kind of training them. Anything else because they are more flighty, they do jump around, and if you're a dental office, say, you're not going to have title to title to title. I mean, they might get a raise every year, but there's not a whole lot of mobility. It's not like a startup online company where it just skyrockets as 100 new employees next year. So what do you do to keep them there?
So one of the things that, and it's contentious with some audiences, but I encourage everyone to support their employees' side hustle, and not only to support it, but to give them time to do it. You look at companies like Google they have a 20% rule where 20% of their time is actually the employees can allocate it to things that they're passionate about. Facebook has a program that it's called Fuel, where they can do the same thing. And I've put that into application, and I say to everyone, make sure that 10% of your time is going towards whatever it is that you want to do. And it just needs to not be in conflict or direct competition with what our current offering is. So the 2 examples I use is one person on the team that decided to give his marketing prowess to one of the nonprofits in town. Mm-hmm. And that's where he put his time. Another one is a woman on my team. She'd always wanted to have an online startup around clothes. And so she started a clothing online company, and I helped her with it, everything from the cap table to the execution. And about 6 months into it, she turned to me and she said, "This is a lot harder than I ever thought." And it ended up, she stepped out of that business. But there was a lot of things learned there. And one of them is that you don't have to leave your job in order to pursue something. And I think you find that with this generation, they are doing those things. The other piece is a constant reminder that the grass is not greener on the other side. And I call it my 70-30 rule. And my 70-30 rule is that 30% of your job is always going to suck. 30% of your job is going to be not in line with your passions for me, it's usually in the form of Excel spreadsheets, right? And we live in a society, especially with social media, and especially with the younger millennials, they've grown up with it their whole lives, where I say you've got to stop comparing your insides to other people's outsides. And my 70-30 rule is actually just breaking down with them their job description, what's in your 70% zone and what's in your 30% zone. And guess what? The grass is not greener on the other side. You see these perfect lives of your friends that are playing out. In reality, that isn't the truth. So let's always talk about whether or not your job is 70-30. But there is that, you've got to be instilling that whole thing. I mean, and I go as far, I bring in a mindfulness instructor where once a month, the mindfulness instructor will actually help the team live in the moment, experience these things. So I think that's a big change that's happened, that even a lot of us can attest to. I think, I call it the Pinterest station of our generation. I've got 2 young kids. You see it on the first day of school, everyone's got their perfect kids with Sally's first day in 4th grade, her favorite food. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. So let's, as leaders, help our people let that go.
Yeah. Amen to that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, hey, let me, what's one question that I should have asked you that I didn't, that you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up on our time here?
So one of my favorite and stickiest things is a thing that I say, turn your let's and answer it with a by when. And I think we live in a society, and a lot of you business owners can attest to this, but many people aren't willing to put in the work. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are also, they love to say, let's do this program. And then there's no accountability, no follow through. Mm-hmm. So what I instill with everyone is if they're gonna send an email saying let's do this, then you got to answer it with, okay, by when. And try this in just your social life. And when you leave a party, or you're at a party, or whatever it is, let's grab coffee or let's grab dinner. And then you answer immediately with, okay, by when. And then they're either you're gonna figure out they didn't really want to hang out with you, they're just saying it, or you'll find yourself eating dinner, sharing coffee, sharing a drink with this person in the next week. And so I try to also bring that accountability, but then also this constant reminder that it's the big champagne moments that we all strive for are comprised of these small things, lots of small things, and lots of small hard work. And you know that as leaders who have started companies, it takes a lot of this stuff. So we've got to, I think, bring a little bit more of that. So answer your let's with a by when.
By when. I love that. Actually having a deadline focus as opposed to just dream about it and have it just waste your time. Well,
exactly.
This has been very helpful, Chris. Where can people find more about you, find your book, and to understand millennials better? Where do they go?
Yeah, so the book's available almost everywhere, The Millennial Whisper. And we did set up a landing page for everyone listening to this podcast with a free millennial leadership assessment. So you can actually figure out what type of millennial leader you are. And you can also download a free first chapter of the book. And that is at themillennialwhisperer.com/work the system. And that is 2 L's and 2 N's. For themillennialwhisperer.com. And then it's available at Amazon and hopefully your local bookseller at this point.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, congratulations to you on the great book. And I'm looking forward, I'm actually going to pick it up. I'm going to read it because I think this is so key to understand this new generation and to actually manage them well. And like you said, they're reflecting the poor leadership or the leadership holes that we're actually having and our technology holes. I think you got to live in reality. If you have those holes, you can't just pretend they're going to go away. It's going to accelerate with Generation Z. It sounds like
100%.
So you got to stick with the program.
And I think we need to remind them that life is not perfect and life takes a lot of hard work. And the more that we can instill that, the better it's going to be.
Definitely. Well, good. Well, thanks everybody who's joining us in the live stream today. And thanks everybody who's watching the podcast, listening to the podcast. And stay tuned in next week. I'll be sharing with you another business expert like Chris or an author, or speaker, or a previous client to help you grow your business so you can make more and work less. And also, I just want to let you know that if you want to get a copy of that book behind me, Work the System, copy mailed to your house, your desk, your office, leave us a review at any of the channels, either iTunes or YouTube, Facebook, our website, anywhere. Leave a review and send us an image of that at info@workthesystem.com. I'll be drawing one name a week and mailing it out to you if you are the winner of the drawing.